Can your loved ones who died still see you right now? When you sit alone at night, when you cry in silence, or even when you laugh, could there be eyes from another world watching you, praying for you, longing for your soul? Saint Faustina Kowalska, the mystic of divine mercy, was shown visions so mysterious, so heart-piercing, that they force us to confront this question head-on. She didn't just dream of heaven or imagine ghosts. She saw souls, radiant, sorrowful, and burning with love, moving between the realms of time and eternity. One evening, she felt a cold presence in her cell. She turned, and there stood a soul trembling in pale light, asking for a single prayer. But that wasn't what terrified her most. What broke her was when the soul whispered, "We see our loved ones, sister. We see them forget." Those words, revealed in the diary that changed modern Catholic mysticism, hold a truth so powerful it could alter how you live every moment. Jesus himself would later tell Faustina that the barrier between this world and the next is thinner than anyone dares believe. Before this video ends, you will know exactly what that means and why your next prayer might save someone who's watching you even now. For Saint Faustina, the invisible world was not imagination. It was daily reality. The young nun from Poland lived surrounded by silence, but within that silence she often felt an overwhelming presence, as if unseen souls were breathing beside her, longing to be noticed. In her diary, she wrote of moments when she would suddenly feel an intense sorrow that wasn't her own, a heaviness that filled the air, and then hear a quiet voice asking, "Sister, please pray for me." These were not visions of fantasy. They were encounters permitted by God to awaken humanity to a hidden truth, that death does not sever love. She once described walking through the convent corridor, when suddenly she saw a soul bathed in a dim flame, eyes full of both pain and hope. It bowed before her and whispered words that made her heart tremble. "I am still waiting." That soul vanished as quickly as it appeared, but Faustina could no longer live as before. She realized that purgatory was not a place of punishment alone. It was a place of longing, a place of unfinished love. From that day forward, she would pray the chaplet of divine mercy, not only for the living, but also for those unseen faces who surrounded her, yearning for remembrance. They were not gone. They were still bound to the living through the mysterious current of divine mercy, a current flowing both ways, from earth to eternity, from time into timelessness. Heaven sees perfectly. The saints, purified and radiant in the vision of God, see through his light, and nothing remains hidden from their joy. But for the souls who have not yet reached that glory, for those still being purified in the fire of divine mercy, the vision is partial, veiled, fragmented, yet filled with yearning. Saint Faustina understood this mystery not through books, but through what she saw. She was shown that the difference between heaven and purgatory is not separation by distance, but by light. The blessed in heaven gaze directly upon the face of God, and through him they see all things. They behold their loved ones on earth, not with earthly eyes, but with the love of God himself. The souls in purgatory, however, live in a twilight of divine longing. They see dimly, not through the perfection of beatitude, but through the permission of mercy. When God allows it, they may behold the living, not as spectators of the world, but as witnesses of love unfinished, bonds not yet healed. The Catechism of the Catholic Church affirms that the communion of saints unites the faithful on earth, the souls in purgatory, and the saints in heaven in one living organism of grace. St. Thomas Aquinas wrote that those purified by divine fire are not cut off from the living, for charity remains the link of vision, prayer, and grace. And Faustina's revelations made this theology breathe. She experienced that the dead are not dead. They are more alive than we are, yet unable to act for themselves. In this suspended vision, their eyes turn not toward condemnation, but toward hope. They gaze upon the world not to haunt it, but to seek help from it. Help from you, from me, from every soul who still breathes and can pray. Faustina learned that in God's mysterious order, love does not end with death. It merely changes its form. There is a passage in St. Faustina's diary so full of sorrow that even reading it feels like standing in a cold wind from another world. She wrote that one night, while praying in her cell, she suddenly found herself surrounded by a vast multitude of souls, countless faces half lit by a strange glow, some peaceful, others twisted in anguish. They made no sound at first, only looked at her with pleading eyes. Then, one voice broke through the silence. "We are forgotten." The cry pierced her heart. Faustina fell to her knees, trembling. The souls were not hateful or accusing. They were desperate. Desperate for one thing only: remembrance. She realized that the greatest torment of purgatory is not fire, but forgetfulness, the pain of love unreturned. The souls remember every face, every name of those they loved, yet from earth they feel silence. They see their families move on, distracted, occupied, indifferent. They see lights in homes where once prayers were said, now replaced by screens and noise, and they wait. Faustina wrote that she saw souls who would have been freed long ago if only one Hail Mary had been offered for them, one act of mercy done in their name. Jesus allowed her to feel their yearning so she could tell the world, "We are one family, and you have abandoned us." That night she promised to never let a soul be forgotten again. Every time she entered the chapel, she would kneel not just for herself, but for the nameless dead, those who have no one left to remember them. She prayed that every act of mercy, every tear, every hidden suffering offered with love would reach them like light in their darkness. And in that moment, Faustina understood something the world had long forgotten, that the souls we neglect are the very ones who, when freed, will become our most faithful intercessors. The cry of the forgotten is never lost in heaven. It becomes a river of mercy, waiting to flow back upon the living. There came a moment when the Lord himself spoke to St. Faustina about this mystery, not in symbols or parables, but in words that burned with divine sorrow. She recorded it trembling. "My daughter, help me to save souls. You will go to sinners and to the souls in purgatory, and you will obtain mercy for them through your prayers." But then his tone changed, heavy with grief. "The greatest indifference is found among those who should know me best." Faustina felt those words pierce her like a sword. She realized that Jesus was not speaking of pagans or atheists, but of baptized souls, the faithful, the ones who go to church, yet forget the suffering beyond the veil. Jesus showed her how even the smallest prayer can draw down oceans of mercy upon the dead. But when his people do not pray, the flow of mercy is delayed. He said, "They are your brothers and sisters. Their pain could be shortened if you only remembered them." In one vision, Faustina saw the souls in purgatory reaching upward, as if stretching toward the chalice during Mass. She understood that every Eucharist offered, every chaplet prayed, every sacrifice silently endured, becomes a chain of light descending into that abyss of purification. The living and the dead are not separated. They depend on one another. Jesus revealed that souls who suffer cannot help themselves. Their time for merit is over, but ours is not. We hold in our hands the key to their release. Yet too often we are occupied with fleeting things, scrolling past eternity. Faustina wept, begging for forgiveness for all the forgotten prayers of mankind. The Lord told her, "When you pray for them, you console my heart. When you forget them, you wound it." That night she stayed in the chapel until dawn, offering her fatigue, her hunger, her very breath as reparation. She knew now that mercy was not a sentiment. It was a mission. Every act of prayer for the departed was a bridge thrown across death's chasm, carrying souls home to God. Then came the moment that changed everything, the moment when heaven itself allowed Faustina to see what no living soul should witness. It was during a late-night prayer before the Blessed Sacrament. The candlelight flickered, the convent silent, and suddenly the air grew still, as though the whole world had stopped breathing. Before her appeared a faint light, not blinding but gentle, sorrowful. From within it emerged a soul, luminous yet trembling. Its eyes, radiant and human, gazed not at Faustina, but downward, as if searching for something beyond the walls of the chapel. Faustina asked softly, "Why are you here?" The soul turned to her and said, "God has allowed me to see those I left behind, my family, my children, my beloved, but I cannot reach them. I see them forgetting prayer, turning to the noise of the world. I long for them, yet my love cannot cross the veil." Faustina felt her heart break. She saw in that moment that the greatest suffering of these souls was not fire, but the vision of love unreciprocated. To see and not be seen, to love and not be remembered. Jesus later explained to her that sometimes, out of his infinite mercy, he allows the souls in purgatory to perceive their loved ones still on earth. Not to haunt or frighten, but to awaken prayer, to stir hearts to mercy. Faustina described how the soul's light brightened whenever she prayed the chaplet for it, as though every word released a spark of grace that lessened its torment. When she whispered, "Eternal Father, I offer you the body and blood, soul and divinity of your dearly beloved Son." The flame around the soul began to fade, replaced by warmth and peace. It smiled once and disappeared. That vision left Faustina trembling for hours. She realized that love truly never dies, but it must be purified. The bonds between souls do not vanish at the grave. They are woven into the very mercy of God. And sometimes, when that mercy allows it, the eyes of the departed can still find us, not to accuse, but to remind us that we belong to one another, even beyond the limits of death. In the days that followed, Faustina could not pray as she once did. Every time she knelt before the tabernacle, she felt that invisible current of love passing through her. From the living to the dead, from the dead back to the living, all joined in the same heartbeat of divine mercy. It was as though her soul had been stretched between heaven and earth, feeling both the joy of redemption and the ache of waiting. She began to understand what Jesus called the divine economy of love, that nothing done in charity ever dies, and every act of mercy echoes through eternity. A single prayer for the departed is not lost. It reverberates through the mystical body of Christ, transforming both the one who prays and the one who is prayed for. This is why Faustina said, "If we knew how much the souls in purgatory suffer, we would never cease praying for them." In her revelations, she saw how divine mercy is not limited by time. A prayer said today can touch a soul who died a century ago, because in God there is no before or after. Mercy moves in every direction, and when a soul in purgatory is finally freed, it does not simply vanish into heaven. It turns back toward the earth and becomes an intercessor for those who remembered it. The love you give returns multiplied 1,000 times. Faustina compared this to a river. The more mercy flows out of you, the more God fills you in return. Every rosary bead, every chaplet, every mass offered for the dead becomes part of that divine circulation of grace, an endless exchange between the church militant, the church suffering, and the church triumphant. She saw, too, that the souls we help most are often the ones who will help us at the hour of our own death. In God's plan, nothing is wasted. Every act of mercy plants a seed that will bloom in eternity. This is why Faustina wrote that love does not perish, but becomes purified through suffering. The prayers you whisper today might be the hands that lift you tomorrow, The divine economy of love is not a poetic idea. It is the reality Jesus revealed to her, a reality in which heaven, purgatory, and earth are not distant places, but one living organism of grace, all sustained by His heart. The souls who see us do so not through sadness alone, but through hope. They look toward us, waiting not for pity, but for participation, waiting for us to choose love strong enough to cross death itself. There was one night when Faustina felt an overwhelming sorrow in her soul, a heaviness she could not explain. The convent was silent, her sisters asleep, and yet her heart throbbed with grief as though 1,000 cries were echoing within her chest. She went to the chapel, knelt before the tabernacle, and whispered, "Jesus, what is this suffering?" Then the Lord spoke, "It is the cry of the souls who are forgotten. Offer me your suffering for them." She bowed her head and said, "Yes, Lord." In that instant, an invisible fire enveloped her. She felt the anguish of those who waited, the ache of souls who yearned for release. But then, just as suddenly, she saw a radiant light filling the darkness. From that light emerged a face, peaceful and smiling. It was the same soul who had once appeared to her bathed in flames. Now it glowed with serenity, whispering, "Thank you." Faustina burst into tears. The vision faded, but the message burned into her heart. Jesus had entrusted her with a mission to remind the world that the forgotten dead are not truly gone. They remember us. They pray for us. They wait for our prayers like thirsty ground waits for rain. Every soul in purgatory is someone's mother, father, child, friend. And yet so many have no one left to remember their name. Faustina wrote, "The Lord made me understand that my suffering united with His becomes a weapon of mercy for them." She learned that even the smallest offering, a sigh, a hidden pain, a moment of patience, can become currency in heaven, purchasing freedom for the suffering. Nothing is wasted in love. The story of that radiant soul spread quietly among her sisters. They began to join her in prayer for the dead, offering their little sacrifices throughout the day. And something remarkable happened. The convent began to feel lighter, more peaceful, as if invisible gratitude filled the air. It was as though the walls themselves were whispering thank you. From that day forward, Faustina called her mission the Forgotten Promise. It was the promise she made to Jesus, to never let love die in silence, to remember those who see us but cannot reach us, to speak their names before God, and to teach the world that mercy never ends at the grave. And so, at last, we arrive at the question that began it all. Can the souls of the departed truly see their loved ones still living on earth? St. Faustina's visions, the testimony of saints, and the teachings of the Church converge to whisper a profound truth. Yes, by the permission of God, they can. But this sight is not like ours. It is not constant, not bound by human senses, nor granted for curiosity's sake. It is given only through mercy, and always with purpose. Faustina described how the souls in purgatory sometimes perceive the lives of their loved ones, not to interfere, but to intercede, to see them through the light of divine justice and love. They behold the choices we make, our prayers, our forgetfulness. They do not see the world as we do, but rather as a reflection in eternity. The ripple of every act of charity, the shadow of every omission of love. When God allows them this vision, it is a grace that deepens their longing for heaven and renews their prayer for us. In her diary, Faustina wrote that she understood this perception as a window opened for love. Through it, God lets the souls glimpse those for whom they once lived, so that their purification might be completed through love, perfected in prayer. And just as they can see us by His mercy, so too do our prayers reach them by His will. No distance, no grave, no veil too thick for the fire of divine love. But Faustina also warned that this grace is not meant to satisfy human curiosity. It is meant to awaken responsibility. The dead do not appear to entertain the living. they appear to remind them. Every vision Faustina had was a call to action, a call to mercy. The question is not merely, can they see us, but rather, do we see them? Jesus revealed to her that when we pray for the dead, we become mirrors of His own mercy. Our prayers allow His light to reach them, and their gratitude becomes a blessing that will one day return to us. In this divine exchange, the line between heaven and earth fades. For love cannot be divided by death. Yes, they see us, not always, not in every moment, but in the moments that matter most. They see our hearts when they lift toward heaven, our hands when they fold in prayer, our souls when they turn from sin. And in those moments, heaven itself rejoices, because one act of remembrance becomes a spark that lights eternity. So now you know, the souls of our loved ones are not lost in the shadows. They are near, waiting, watching through the veil of divine mercy. They see us not with human eyes, but through the gaze of God, and every prayer you whisper for them becomes a bridge of light across eternity. St. Faustina revealed that the living and the dead are bound by one heartbeat, the mercy of Christ, and that heartbeat never stops. This is not superstition. It is the deepest reality of love. Death does not end relationships, it purifies them. When you remember your loved ones in prayer, when you offer a chaplet of divine mercy or a mass for their souls, you participate in the same mission Jesus gave to Faustina, to release souls through love. Every act of mercy, every prayer for the forgotten, becomes a key that unlocks heaven's doors for someone who still waits in hope. Jesus told Faustina, when you pray for them, you draw mercy upon yourself. The promise is simple and eternal. Those whom you help will one day help you. When your own soul stands before God, the ones you freed will surround you, radiant, whispering, "You remembered us." So tonight, before you close this video, pause and speak the name of someone you've lost. Offer them to divine mercy. Write their name in the comments as an act of remembrance. Let the world see that love has not died, because they still see you. But the question heaven asks is, do you still remember them?